Amazing. All right, welcome everyone to our second seminar in our Industry Insider series with fellow NYU alumni and sports industry professionals. So today we have three incredible women who have graciously joined us for a Women in MLB seminar. So welcome everybody. So I'll do some brief introductions and then we can get right into some questions. As Vanessa mentioned in the chat box, if you do have any questions in the chat feature, and Ben will get to them and just relay them to me. So let's start off with Erin. So Erin is currently the digital marketing coordinator for the Tampa Bay Rays. She graduated from NYU in 2017 with a bachelor's degree in sports management with an emphasis on digital media. At the Rays, she helped oversee the content production and publication across all social media platforms. Next, we have Rene Rismondo. Rene is the current Players Operations Coordinator for the MLBPA. She attended NYU University and was a graduate of the Sports and Professional Studies class of 2017, and she also holds her Bachelor of Science degree in Sports Management from NYU. Lastly, we have Samantha Hickey. Samantha is a graphics coordinator at the Yes Network. She received her Bachelor's in Science in Sports Management at NYU in 2013. And throughout her career, she has worked in a variety of departments such as PR, event management, media relations, and experiential marketing with organizations such as Octagon, BMW, the New York Yankees, and most recently, the Yes Network. So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
No problem at all. So we'll start off with some questions first. So the first would be, what has your career journey really been like thus far, and how does or did NYU play a role in your career aspirations so far? And whoever would like to go first.
I'll go first, I guess. So my journey's been like, I pretty much knew I wanted to do sports since high school. So NYU was a big part of that because obviously they had the sports management program. Funny enough, I actually didn't even know that when I applied. But I had such a sports driven application that ultimately they ended up like contacting me and being like, so like you're in, but like we have this program that we think that you should like go to. And I was like, oh, that's great. When I ended up getting there, obviously like a big part of it was our faculty advisors. I thought that was a huge thing for me personally, having kind of like a mentor in a way right off the bat was great. I explored so many internships throughout my time there from the very beginning, and having that be a very core part of our kind of curriculum, I guess, was definitely essential. I held internships throughout just different sports and in different areas of digital marketing. So all of that played a huge role in building connections, getting skills and capabilities to ultimately, when it came time to graduation, get a full-time job. I ultimately went a little bit away from sports just based on when I graduated and kind of the jobs I wanted. I didn't really want to settle. And so I just kind of went out a little bit, but I stayed connected within sports. And then ultimately this past year was able to get a job with the Rays. And so back in the sports industry, and very happy with that. But NYU played a huge role, and I know for a fact, like if I went somewhere else, I'm not sure I would be in my position right now, because obviously everything happens for a reason, but I just learned so many skills and networked probably my face off while I was at NYU. So definitely a huge part of it.
Absolutely.
I can echo a lot off of what Erin said, in that coming to NYU, obviously I knew it was a huge passion of mine, sports, very sports driven, something I wanted to do and find a way to turn a passion into a career. And NYU was able to help facilitate that for me and for many of you through the sports management program. And just also echoing, like the faculty advisors definitely played a huge part in my growth, not only as a student, but a growth from my student into my professional career. One of the internships that I held actually was with the World Baseball Classic, and did require a little bit of travel at the time. It's an international baseball tournament, and part of that internship did require a little bit of travel during the semester that overlapped with some classes. And I was very fortunate that our faculty really understands that if you have something, an amazing opportunity, they work with you to make it worth it. And they were able to help assist me. I did some class remotely. I was able to rework my schedule a little bit to basically make it work, still attend all my classes, get all my work in on time, and be the life of a student holding an internship or a job, which is a very heavy schedule. But NYU is definitely, through our faculty advisors and our professors, they were able to really make it work. And then fortunately for me, that internship led into kind of a part-time role with the Players Association, because World Baseball Classic is a joint venture between Major League Baseball and Major League Baseball Players Association. It led into a bit of a not internship, but part-time role until I graduated. And then upon graduation, they offered me a full-time position to join their staff in the player operations department. So without the faculty advisors and without the professors in the program wanting you to succeed and take every opportunity, if I hadn't done that, I definitely wouldn't be where I was today.
Yeah, and I guess just to echo my perspective, I came into NYU a little bit less sure about what I wanted to do. When I applied to schools, NYU was the only one. I noticed they had a sports program, and I was like, hey, I like sports, I'll apply there. Everywhere else I applied, I just didn't. I applied undecided. So, eventually narrowing it down, that's eventually why I came to NYU. I was like, well, if, the sports program doesn't work out, there's a lot of other opportunities, but I'm obviously very glad I stayed in the sports program, and, to the great professors and things like that. And just having the opportunities, like, I guess one particular example I'll select is that, I was able to work in the sports information department in the athletics department. And I'll shout out Jeff Bernstein there. He, after I graduated, he forwarded on along a job opening with the Yankees. So that's how I got in there. So just like, it's a testament to the connections that you make at NYU that can help you, go where you want to go and find the particular spot for you. So.
Absolutely. So what really drove you to be involved in sports initially? So I know for myself, I was an athlete growing up through high school, but I had so many injuries that I knew being a professional or amateur athlete wasn't really in the cards for me anymore. So I decided, okay, how am I still going to do something that I'm incredibly passionate about, but, get a job, make money, and still be around it? So what really drove you initially to be attracted to sports? And do you still have that passion today? And how do you really sustain it in a working environment?
Similar to what you just said, I was also an athlete growing up and in high school. And I don't know if any of you women feel the same, but in certain sports, there's like a ceiling for where women can go. Huge baseball fan, obviously it makes a little sense in where I work and what my internships and career opportunities taken me down. And at the time, softball was taken out of the Olympics. There was no professional softball league. Women don't play baseball. There really wasn't anything else I could do with the sport. If I wanted to continue on and play collegiately, I could, but for me, where was that going to get me after college? And it was definitely a harsh realization. There's so many incredible female athletes out there, but a lot of them have had to basically make it their life, like Serena with tennis or Simone Biles with the Olympics. And so without kind of having that way to play sports and make it a career, I had to kind of turn that passion into a different way career. And I loved doing, but thought about maybe why don't I do it from a different angle or behind the scenes? And that was kind of, for me, the way that I figured this is the best way to take not only just my passion, but my hobbies, my activities, what I love, and turn it into something that I could go further with, because playing softball past senior year in high school wasn't really going to go too much further for me career-wise.
Yeah, I definitely echo a lot of what Rene just said. In high school, I really wanted to be a doctor. I'm a big science nerd, but I ended up getting into this thing. It's called DECA. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of it. And I just fell in love with business, and I was really good at it, especially marketing. I just became very obsessed with it. And I was in like business merchandising, and there was like a sports category, but obviously it was super packed, especially with men. And my teacher actually looked at me and was like, you're really good at this. Like, you could do great in sports, and I know that you love it, but for this like thing, and I want you to like win and you need to like take your skills to the next level, like just do this category. But ultimately I knew I loved sports, and I just was obsessed with all things sports business. When it came to a career, I think a lot of people in social media could probably feel the same way, or at least anything in digital marketing. There wasn't really a career in it. People are like, oh, what's your dream job, Erin? And I was like, I want to do social media and sports. And they're like, what? And that seems cool now, but even like 6-7 years ago, 8 years ago, I guess, in a way, that wasn't really like a job. Social media manager wasn't really a thing, or at least people thought you couldn't make a ton of money off of it. But I still wanted to pursue it. I loved it, and I think that that's a key part of it, is like, it may not be like a thing or something that seems popular, but if you're super passionate about it and you think that it's going to go somewhere, definitely pursue it. And NYU continue to like instill that in me, is like, keep going after this. Obviously social media has grown to where it is now, but the sports world is pretty vast, and I think that also helps in all of this. Like, we think major league sports, and I'm very blessed to be in MLB, but the sports world is vast. So just the amount of opportunity to be able to pursue something that you love and that you're just absolutely passionate about kept me in this world for sure, especially since I left. And then I just had this hankering in me like this whole time. I was like, no, I need sports. There's just something special about it. The community, the people, the type of content you get to create, it's definitely unique.
Yeah, and like Rene and Erin said, I also saw the writing on the wall in high school in terms of, playing sports collegiately and things like that. And also, similar to Rene, my favorite sport also is baseball. Like, when I was younger, I would get up in the morning and get the newspaper and like read the box scores and things like that. So, it's nice to finally find a career where I can like merge that combination of sports and statistics and kind of disseminate that, which is kind of my role now. So yeah, that passion for sports, I think, and Erin said it well too, NYU does instill that in you to keep kind of focus on what you do actually want to achieve. And they're a great conduit to help you get there as well. So.
All right, awesome. I'm just going to jump in here for Polina while her fire alarm goes off. So I guess as whether in general or stuff that you've noticed specifically as women trying to seek a job in sports, what were some of those obstacles that you faced? And I guess especially right now, in this current environment where there aren't so many jobs and, we're all kind of trying to find the best way to get our foot in the door. So like any words of wisdom as far as that job search is concerned?
Oh man, do I have stories? No, I think the biggest thing for me and the biggest piece of advice that I ever got was to be strong-headed. Don't let anybody kind of like push you around, like get your seat at the table. And I don't mean that in like get your foot in the door. I think that's going to be hard for anybody, particularly women in sports, just because there's this view that we aren't as smart or we're not as good at sports. We don't have the knowledge, whatever it might be. But you just have to be strong-headed in your skills and abilities. And I think that goes for anybody. When you go into that interview for a job or with your application, your resume, you have to be confident in your abilities. You have to say, what I bring to the table is important for your business and your brand. There isn't another option. And I think that kids, especially like college students and things, they have a hard time of being able to talk about themselves in a confident manner where they feel like, oh, well, I'm just like super like all about me. And really in an interview, that's what it is. You have to say that it is all about you and that the only option should be you. So definitely be super like excited about yourself. You're confident in your abilities and what you bring to the table, and be prepared. Know the business inside and out. Know your ideas. Know the things. I cannot tell you how many times, like I'll do mock interviews with a lot of kids because that's one thing I got really good at. And the one thing is that they're just not prepared for the potential questions that they're going to get about the brand. So be as prepared as possible. Take this time to get ready, I guess, because there isn't a lot of jobs out there right now. So just do tons of research on sports and what brands or teams, organizations, whatever it might be, will need post-COVID. Because once those jobs do start opening back up, you immediately apply, you should be making your connections, and once you get to that interview, you should have all the facts. If you aren't preparing yourself during this time, you are missing out.
Yeah, just to echo that too, I think that's one thing that personally I've had to learn to instill myself with a sense of confidence, and that I do know what I'm talking about, and then I do know sports, and in my day-to-day job too, sometimes I do get intimidated because we have a lot of sports fans, and they'll recall facts from 1941, and I'll be like, wow, that's impressive, but you know what, I bring something else to the table, and it is important to highlight that as well, and particularly when you are in interviews, I think it's important also to be proactive, and like what Erin was saying about researching the company, research the role that you're applying for too, and see, okay, it might be a very generic job description, need someone who's good with like Word, Excel, like the generic things, but it's up to you to kind of take it a step further and be like, well, what they're really looking for is someone who needs this skill. And then when you're in through the interview, you can point to your resume and be like, I do have this skill, and this is how I will use it at your company. So that's something I always tried to think of when I was going into interviews and things like that. That's one, I guess, piece of advice I'll pass on.
I think similar to both what Erin and Sam said, and in particular Sam's too, like I think we get challenged a lot sometimes about what you know, and whether that fact from 1941 is important or relevant, great. If you know it, great. But otherwise, if you don't, something else that not everyone else in the room. And I feel like you constantly sometimes always have to earn your place at the table. Like Erin said, it's not getting that foot in the door, but it's getting that seat at the table. And I think ironically, the best piece of advice, and it still sticks with me to this day, that I was ever told by a supervisor, was think like a man. And it's like, I was so taken aback when they said that to me. I was like, whoa, like what do you mean? But then they were like, don't be emotional. Don't have any emotion in your decision. Be black and white. State the facts. State what you know. State what you're good at. Show them in your knowledge. Show them in the facts, and you're gonna prove yourself just by that. And so it's funny that it's like a panel of women in baseball, and the best advice I was ever given was to think like a man. And I have to tell you, like, just do it. Just show the facts, show the black and white, show yourself, and you will earn that seat at the table. If they question you, so what? You know your own set of knowledge. You think a different way that they don't think. And you know what the great thing is about earning that seat at the table? You're probably one of the only few women in there, so your voice is definitely going to resonate different than other people's, and voice will be heard, and you'll definitely bring up a different perspective that maybe no one else in that room was thinking. In the time of COVID, I have to say, like, I don't even know how to say I'm so sorry that you have to go through these internships and these jobs and these hirings in such a world that's so unprecedented. There's so much unknown. I know a lot of students have been reaching out lately saying, like, is the MLBPA still having their internship program? I don't even know. It's such a weird world right now. There's so much unknown. But like Erin said, take this time where we're kind of not doing anything, where everything's in flux, and just better yourself so that you do earn that seat at the table.
I think kind of like along what Rene said with, like, kind of not necessarily like think like a man. I actually love that kind of statement. I never viewed it in that way, but I think even men and women do this thing where if we are in a lower position and we're trying to get our ideas across and we know that something's great, we'll still kind of like throw little anecdotes in there like, oh, maybe you should consider this, or you'll say something and be like, oh, just maybe, it's okay, or you're fine if it doesn't really go anywhere, or you say I'm sorry a lot and you just have sorries thrown in there. Just take all those out. Just take them out. Be, again, kind of that confidence in what you know, and don't be sorry. Don't just consider it. actually consider it. Put it out there. And the worst that anything is going to say is obviously, A, it's not going to happen. Your ideas don't get used or whatnot, but at least you stayed steadfast on what you were doing. So big piece of advice that I ever got was take sorries and just maybe think about it out of any sort of vocabulary that you have in emails or Slack messages.
Also in email writing too, like take out like I was hoping, or just like,
Yes.
no, I want to, you know.
No
I just
emotion.
watched every
You.
single panelist shake their head at that last one.
No emotions, straight facts. You
Yeah.
belong in there. So don't let them question it.
Yeah, I think that's all really, really great advice. So I'm just curious, kind of to that same end, is there anything that you would suggest either to those already, women already working in sports, or women students, looking to get that career in sports? Is there anything that you've seen, ways that women can empower other women to get into these roles that you guys are, or things that maybe you could prepare specifically in college, in high school, maybe in retrospect, things you wish you did differently, but specifically, as a woman trying to get a job in sports?
I would say network. Network with other women. I think it becomes hard because there's kind of that viewpoint again, not a lot of women work in sports. So sometimes you're just like automatically reaching out to men, and there's nothing wrong with that. But definitely do some due diligence and see who the women are that are leaders and that are there. Whether it be a particular sport you want or a different one, but definitely take time to network with specifically women or people of color, whatever the diversity might be. It's going to not only broaden your viewpoint of the sports world, but obviously I think as women, we want to help other women become where they are. So if you can reach out to somebody who's very similar to you, you can be very relatable with them, but they're going to potentially try a little bit harder to help you because they understand the position that you're in. I don't know if anybody else on the panel can kind of relate to this, but if a young lady was to reach out to me and say, hey, I'm having a trouble with this, or I want to work at MLB or another team, do you have any connections? Like in my head, I'm like, yes, another girl. Thank you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help a guy too, but there's just something like in there that's like, you want to help another girl try and make it.
No, I completely agree. I think women want to hire more women and help women. Sorry guys, there's nothing against you, but I think there's so few of us in the room. We want our voices to be heard, and we want to empower and enable one another. So women want to help and hire other women, and I definitely echo a lot of what Erin said. I think a big thing of what I did was networking in college and networking at NYU. And my first internship was a communications PR internship at Major League Baseball Players Association. Anyone who knows me knows I don't do social media. Like that's not me. I'm terrible at it. But I networked within the organization. That department was led by a male. I networked within the organization and met one of few female executives internally, and she's now my supervisor a few years down the road. So I think women want to hire other women, but you just have to show that you know and you belong there. And it's definitely just always want to help each other out because there's so few.
For sure, and I also agree with everything that's been said. I guess also just to put the NYU spin on it too, I think that's also a great resource to use too. Like when I'm looking on LinkedIn and see the little attended NYU, like that's also a little bit of a flag to be like, oh, this person went to NYU. Like obviously now that I'm a couple years removed from college, it's kind of nice to be able to give back and be like, my experience could help someone else, especially if it is someone who is in my position 5 or 6 years ago, a female trying to get into sports. So yeah.
And
oh, go ahead.
I'm not sure if anybody else here can kind of relate to this, but when I came to NYU, the one thing that never even really crossed my mind was the fact that I was a woman. They constantly were making sure that I was like going after the things I wanted. They never like they never even really brought it to my attention. Like, you're a woman, this is going to be really hard for you to get in. That just never really crossed my mind. Maybe I'm lucky. I'm not really sure. But I think Hollander's on this video call, and he definitely like always reminded me, just like, you have talent. It doesn't matter whether you are a male or female. Like, it's all about your skills and abilities. And when you go into those interviews, again, it's don't let even gender be something that's in your head, because as soon as you think it, or it starts to like brain fog you a little bit, or even you bring it up, that's something that's going to be potentially, even not directly, a red flag for somebody who's trying to hire. So try not to even like let it be a consideration. I think that so many teams and executives and leaders aren't really thinking like, oh, women can't do this anymore. I think it's starting to go away. So you just bring it and bring everything you have and your talents to the table, gender, diversity, things like that, you will get to where you want to go.
I don't think it registered to me that I was like a female in sports management until I had classes, and I was like the only female in that class. Antitrust and collective bargaining, sports law, like it was me, one female versus like 15 men. And I don't think it ever registered until then, because NYU and our professors and our faculty does such a good job of making it not a non-issue. And we hire a diverse staff of professors. Freshman year, I had Cameron Myler, a big-ass lawyer, female Olympian, as one of my professors. Like, they make you realize like gender doesn't matter. And so you don't even think about it. So really huge kudos to NYU for not making it an issue.
Yeah, when Erin brought that point up, I also went back to my own experience. Like, I didn't realize it until I left NYU. And, through my work experience, that's when I was like, oh, I guess I am the female in this room. But, I don't think I ever really felt that way at NYU, even if, maybe the class percentages were a little skewed. Like, I didn't feel intimidated or like it was.
And to Renee's point, like kind of going back to your initial question, Ben, of like, what can women do to like help each other? Network within your own class. I think how many projects did we work together on, Renee? I always usually have like one female in our groups for like group projects and things. Not only just to like keep it diverse, but again, it's just like a lot easier for us to relate to each other, and you kind of want to team up all the time just to make things easier. And again, you're comfortable with those people. So definitely connect with people that you're in your own class. Make sure that you're friends with the females that are doing this. Stick together, stick it out together, be able to make things happen as females, because when you try and single each other out, or you don't network within the community that you even have, it just makes things a lot harder.
Totally. I think that's all really, really great advice. And, just to plug, like, our NYU industry networking database, this is how these panels have all come together. What better resource than to see all of these wonderful alumni that have opted in, that have, gone through the same programs that you have, and to go through and to find, these three women that all work in Major League Baseball. There's even a fourth that wasn't able to join us here today. Or to say, I'm interested in working in industry X, Y, and Z. Who do I have in my NYU network that can help me, get to where I'm trying to get in my career? Look them up, find their LinkedIn page and send them a note. And worst case, you don't hear anything back from them. Best case, it turns into a job. So you have nothing to lose there. But I would be remiss if I didn't plug our database there. So yeah, so kind of that's all really, really great advice. And I think whether you're already have a career or you're looking for that career in sports, I think, everything that you guys touched on there was amazing. But I guess bigger picture, I'm just interested, like, what do you guys think needs to change in order to decrease and eventually eliminate this gender gap in sports?
For one, I would say, I don't even think this starts at the college level, or even something that leagues and those things can do. Obviously, hiring women helps, But at the same time, it does come down to skill and ability. And I will never dismiss the fact that there are plenty of men that are talented and skilled and able to do jobs. You can't just hire women because they are women, just like you can't hire men just because they are men, right? I would love for, just like back in high school and things, for there to be assistance and help in showcasing or telling girls, like, this is a career for you. You can go after this. It's not a male industry just because it has sports in it. Like, I was kind of an oddball because like even back in DECA, I was the only girl that ever wanted to even do sports marketing. I would kind of put it similar to, like, I'm thinking like space and science, like girls in that industry, it just feels weird or looks weird. But I think if from a young age you're empowered to say, hey, yeah, you can go do this, whether it be just showcasing more women who are there and who are leaders in it, but show people that it is a career for women. It's a career for everybody. It doesn't matter your gender. So I think it starts so much earlier than even college, because people have to pursue the career, and that starts very early on, not just once you want to get hired.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's twofold. A lot of it is psychological. I mean, not getting too much into current events, but if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement and what's going on currently, and systemic racism, a lot of it is just the way people were taught to think, or the way people thought things were okay for so long. And there was that stereotypical role for a woman, and where they belonged and where was their place and what sports they could or couldn't partake in. And so I think those generations before us, it was just a psychological way of thought and thinking, like fact pattern for in their minds. So those generations really didn't think to hire women, and they didn't think to really put them in roles in anything other than assistants or different things. But you're seeing now, like, new generations are coming in, new leaders are coming in, younger generations are starting to have an influence in hiring, and now you're finally starting to see more and more women take a seat at the table. But there were so many people who had to trailblaze that for us, and there's still so many people who still have to. And I think in certain cases, some of these leagues do a bit of a disservice by having the must hire one minority. Like, you should hire someone not because they're a woman or not because they're African American, but because they know what they're doing. But you should definitely interview everybody and find out who's the most qualified, and go from there. Don't make it that they have to be the token hire. Like, that hurts as a woman, knowing that sometimes you get that interview just because they have to interview you. Like, it sucks, like, to put it lightly, it really does. So I think changing that way of thinking is something that doesn't happen overnight, but slowly will take time, and we're finally starting to see it. And it's really going to make progress for us and future generations behind us, thankfully, to some trailblazers ahead of us and our own generation in this program.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a matter of increasing the talent pool. Like Erin said, it starts getting the awareness out that women shouldn't have to feel limited in a career in sports. And then obviously at the door too, like the HR managers and the hiring managers, they're the ones too that can have a direct impact on change, because when we get enough women in the door, and then I can look around my program and be, wow, there's X other women around here, that's something that's normal, rather than being necessarily the only one. That I think also will help change too, because then when there's more at the bottom level, we can all kind of start rising up, and it's not just, oh, look at that one woman who's at the top there and she's an anomaly as, a top executive. Like, once we kind of build the groundswell and that starts coming up, I think that's also one way to affect that change.
I don't even know if these are still a thing, but it's something that I love to do. Obviously, like within college, like being guest speaker, like I always try and take advantage of those things, whether it be a panel or actually in classes, being able to show like, hey, women are here. But even like back to my high school, one thing that I love doing is like my high school marketing teacher, I always try and speak and try and give advice or things like that. But again, it's kind of like that career day feel. Like if you can have a woman being there, it at least opens up the eyes like, oh, I have the opportunity to do that. To even females that might not have even thought about it as a career. But then they see it because people love looking up to something. So I think as a woman who's already here is doing whatever we can to make sure that that next generation sees that this is an opportunity for them. If we stay closed off, and yeah, we can do stuff like behind the scenes and trying to like bring people up and hire, but if we're not very public and vocal and being able to show who we are, we're kind of not truly helping the cause.
I think that's an important point too, just because, you know, it's not the top executive and you can't envision the path from how do I go from where I am, just imagining a career in sports, to up at the top. Like you're seeing the people in between and kind of getting a idea of the path that you need to take to get there. So.
Yeah, for sure. And that actually ties us really well into a Q&A we just got. So you mentioned that next generation of women. So, you know, a few years from now, looking back on your career, you know, what is that legacy that you want to leave behind for this next generation of women working in sports?
Wow. Oh man. I would say, and I maybe because like the only word that's coming to mind is like being like a trailblazer, but I feel like that's kind of the legacy I want to leave, is always bringing something new, while also like doing the most I can to help the industry as a whole, whether that be with ideas and concepts and creativity, to being able to assist in diversifying the industry, whatever it might be, is just being the person that is helping the industry become better. That's what I want to do. I'm not here for titles. I'm not here for money. I'm not here for that. I want to make this industry better for everybody and to be a part of it. And there's so many incredible minds here, male and female, whatever it is, but to just make the industry better than I had it. And I will never say that it was great when we started, but it's not going to be perfect ever. But how can we make it a little bit better than how we got it and we're in it?
Yeah, I guess I'd say I'd want my career path, my legacy to be that someone can be comfortable following in my footsteps, and, you know, hopefully like emboldened to even go further than I might end up. You know, just thinking about my career and where I am now, I guess, with the Yes Network, and just feeling like having someone not be intimidated to be like, okay, I want to follow that career path, and, you know, it doesn't limit me just because, you know, there's never been a female graphics coordinator, or there's never been a female producer or whatever at this network. You know, it can be done, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you continue.
Oh no, I was just wrapping up and saying like it can be done.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think literally the exact same for me is, I mean, for those who know me, I love baseball operations. That's my passion. I love the on-field aspect. I love the game of baseball, the numbers, the stats, the player development behind it. And we are finally seeing that Trevor Bauer has a female agent who negotiates his deals. That 2 years ago wasn't even really a thing. She just negotiated his arbitration and owns her own agency. We have yet to have a first female GM. We've had a few incredible assistant female GMs like Kim Eng or Jean Afterman. I hope in the next, not even 10 years, I hope in the next 2 years that I can say like, wow, so-and-so was the first female GM. So I don't want to say it's like my legacy or my goal is to be a female GM. My goal is, I think, to say that women just can. We don't need to be the first, or we don't need to be those trailblazers, but we just can. And it doesn't need to be all about look how few there are, or look at her being the first, or look at her doing her own thing in a man's world or a man's industry. I just think like the whole perspective of the legacy that I think I would like to leave behind. And I think this all the incredible women in this panel too is just that just women can, and we shouldn't be counted out. And so I really hope that we're enabled to, through our skills and through our just what we do, basically.
If I could change like one stereotype, like there was something that my name was behind or like people could relate to, it's being able to change the stereotype of like, especially social media, you'll get those comments of like, oh, the social media guy deserves a raise, or like funny things like that. Like I want to be able to change that narrative. It's no longer guy, it's just a person, not an intern either. Maybe we can change that too. But to where maybe they're saying, oh, the social media girl deserves a raise, or just the social media person deserves a raise. Like, why do we have to have a gender behind it? There's so many people that are capable of it, and gender just shouldn't be like an issue. Same with any diversity thing that's going on right now, is it shouldn't be a factor. We are all on the even playing field, and I think anybody would like to be a part of that change to where everybody can be on that even playing field.
Yeah, the stigma is huge, and I can only imagine you guys feeling that. But even just for me, like when I say something to someone like I work in baseball, and keep it a very point blank statement, oh, what do you do? Social media? Oh, what do you do? Marketing? Oh, are you the charity person? Like, no, I actually work in baseball with the players directly and the numbers and data behind it. Women don't have to be the charity people. They don't have to be, and there's nothing wrong with that they are, if that's what they love, that's what they love. But taking the stigma out behind it, because women can really just do anything they want to. It doesn't have to be just what society tells them to.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, just to that same end, curious, growing up, as women athletes, I think all three of you mentioned you played growing up. So whether, female athletes or females working in sports, were there any role models that you guys had growing up, just, looking up to, like you were saying, Rene, and Samantha, you touched on this as well, you want to leave behind this legacy of like, look, you can do this. This is possible. Like, I just proved that this is possible. So did that exist for you? Like, were there any of those kind of role models?
Yeah, I mean, playing days, I loved Jenny Finch. Obviously, I don't know what softball player doesn't. She, not only just because she was an incredible, talented athlete, but because of the business and the brand she built off of her legacy. And Jessica Mendoza was also very large in the softball world at the time, and now she's obviously going into an analyst role with ESPN in baseball. So she definitely is someone to look up to at times. But I think once I actually got to college and shifted my perspective away from less of the playing, the athletes that I look up to, and more of like the executives in the game that I look up to, for me, Gene Afterman and Kim Eng were definitely two that in baseball were really huge for me, to try and learn about and follow their career path and learn from them. I've had the fortunate opportunity to meet and work with both of them, but just literally taking every opportunity that I can when I'm in a room with them to just listen and learn how they negotiate. Jean Afterman is so incredible. She was a lawyer and an agent before she even went to work for the Yankees and holds her senior executive role there. But women think differently. And so just listening to the way her thought process works when we're in a room with the Yankees is incredible to me, and it's so much to learn from. She negotiated the loophole to get Ichiro over from the Japanese Professional Baseball League into Major League Baseball. So listening to the way some people think, and shifting that from like the athlete role model to the executive role model, those are definitely two that I look up to, and I think definitely have taught me that women look at things differently and they think a little bit differently, but something that's different, that loophole, wow, can you imagine Major League Baseball without Ichiro Suzuki if he hadn't thought of that loophole? So just thinking of thinking differently and thinking about those executives are definitely people that I look up to and love to learn from.
Gene Afterman is
Yeah.
a great shout out. I just wanted to quickly plug, if anybody's interested in her story, Lindsay Adler with The Athletic wrote a great profile on her 6 months ago, maybe. So if you're interested in Gene Afterman's story, I would totally suggest reading that profile.
I second that.
I think I'm gonna definitely second Rene in terms of I looked up to like a lot of athletes growing up, but I'm not really sure I ever focused like on women. I loved Serena Williams and the Lamoureux twins who played on USA Hockey. As I got a little bit older, like obviously I'm not necessarily sure I looked up to them, but I respected the heck out of say like all the U.S. gymnastics people, especially now that you hear a lot of their stories. I definitely respect all the athletes, but I definitely started focusing more on that business side, especially in college. So 2 of them I got to work with directly, which was huge. Danny Ryland, who is the commissioner of the NWHL. Huge. I'm not sure I ever really looked up to her, but it was something that like I knew of her and I respected everything that she was doing, especially to grow a sport and a pro sports league for women. Obviously huge. And then Lisa, who she headed up the USOC marketing and now is the NWSL commissioner. So she was one of my bosses when I had an internship with USOC, but obviously again, everything that she did, she trailblazed something within like men's and women's sports to then just going back to focusing on a women's sports, which is huge. But at the same time, I'm just somebody who doesn't look at gender in terms of like that's your only way to learn. I looked up to like a lot of males too, and just trying to take away the stigma in general. I think a lot of what I did, I was accomplished because I didn't just focus on the fact that I was a woman, or I just tried to not make that a thing. And I know that sounds weird and very hard to like pinpoint, but maybe Sam and Rene have like a similar feeling of like sometimes when you just focus on it and that's like your only thing, sometimes it might also not necessarily be a good thing. I don't know. Now I feel like I'm opening up.
No, I understand what you're saying. Growing up too, like again, because baseball is my favorite sport, there's obviously not very many or any females that play baseball. So I didn't really have any females to look up to, like in terms of like athletes, and then more in college, that's when you kind of start focusing on, or you're aware of like kind of the behind the scenes aspect that obviously we kind of work in now, and you learn who, key players are and if they're women or not. So, again, I think to Erin's point, not necessarily focusing on it, but kind of the internal like clapping when you do see a woman who broke some kind of barrier. I've read an article somewhat recently, and it's not a great example because the name is escaping me, but it was about like this woman who was the first lead NFL producer on an NFL game in quite some time for, I think it was CBS. So, I mean, that's just kind of something that's cool. And when you see that, again, what we've been talking about is, then it starts populating in your mind as like, this is possible. And this is a, path that may be opened now for us. So.
I think too, like, there wasn't as many women in those roles that I could see as like role models. So some of the time you were looking up to men because that's who was in those positions that you could see yourself too. I hope as I look kind of and reflecting on now, I definitely have more role models now that are women because there's more women who are in those spots now. So that's a good thing. And definitely exciting for like the next generation of people coming up that they now have what I didn't have.
Absolutely. And I apologize if the alarm goes off again, but I can definitely attest to that sentiment. When I grew up, my role models were my coaches, and all my coaches were men at the time. So it really wasn't until I got to NYU where I was like, there's so many amazing female role models, again, on the business side and athletes that I can look up to now, because I didn't necessarily have that growing up because my role models were my coaches, coming from Toronto. hockey-centric household. So my athletic role models are players on the Leafs, which were all men. So that's, you know, what
Maybe that's why, because I played hockey.
Yeah, like that's
maybe this is all making sense now.
Yeah, like that's what I grew up knowing. That was my normal. And it really wasn't until I got into a program that was so specific in sports management where I was like, oh yeah, like you need that diversity of opinion, you know, to have those conversations and those ideas really come to fruition. We're like, oh yeah, like that's really smart. She should be in the room because, you know, her merit, she brings something to the table, and that's really what it's all about at the end of the day. I actually have another question for you guys. So this just came to me. So Erin, you might have something to say about this. So one of the most amazing pieces of television I saw was the Canada versus US 3-on-3 women's hockey game during the All-Star game last year. And I was like, this is such an amazing piece of digital media. And, you know, it kind of brings back to the sentiment of like, what do you think it'll take to start pushing more female sports on television? Because the sentiment's, oh, it doesn't get the same amount of ratings, so therefore, you know, we're not going to push it as much. And I just look back to them like, I remember the ratings for that were through the roof and everybody loved watching it. So what do you guys think it'll really take to kind of go past that line and really bring it to fruition?
First thing is that it has to be done.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get ratings if it's not on the TV. I'm
Exactly.
sorry.
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, it does take trials and just putting it out there, whether the ratings are super high or not. Basketball didn't just get big right away because people like obviously like they loved it, but ratings probably weren't like crazy through the roof either. Like you can't watch something and you can't get excited about it, and you can't be a fan of something that you are not being able to watch. I do think it's very, very smart, especially of the women's sports, to dive into new entities and new like programming partners such as Twitch and those outlets. They're reaching a younger generation without necessarily the need of TV. But my hope is, especially right now, you definitely saw it with the NWSL, is through COVID and this like pause on other sports, is that you finally had all these kind of issues come to light and you could put to focus on things that maybe didn't get quite the focus as they did before. And so I'm hoping that these trials and these companies seeing the success of women's sports, and there is potential, there is an audience, you just have to feed the audience. Definitely, I'm hoping is going to help in the long run. And it's just going to be that continuous, you have to show it to people, you have to make it easy for them to be a fan of it, you have to give them the same merchandise opportunities, you have to give them the same opportunities as the men's sports, so that people can fall in love with it. If they can't watch it, if they can't easily access it, of course numbers are going to be down. What do you expect?
For sure. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, just quick. It's actually a little embarrassing to even say this, but last night was the first time I ever actually like tuned into a WNBA game, like live on prime time, because I can never find them. And I think this may be an incredible opportunity for the WNBA to play in the same season as the NBA. And I know there was so much back and forth as to why they should never do that, because of ratings, because of this, because of that. But actually, like, the WNBA game was on last night at 8 o'clock on ESPN2, and it was on my channel. I was like, whoa, the Connecticut Suns are on. Like, I didn't even know that this like existed on my cable.
And people were willing to watch it, and I'm not. I refuse to say
and I didn't put on the NBA bubble. I put on the WNBA.
Yes,
it's exactly echoing what you said. You have to make it available. And I watched it, but it's actually embarrassing to say that it's taken me that long to even do. But it wasn't something that was accessible to your average user, and I really think this has actually kind of taken the narrative that women's sports should be in a different season than men's sports, and said, like, no, they can actually absolutely coincide together and during the same season and be just as successful because they're cross-promoting each other.
I think we talked about this in it was that WNBA course, that special exploratory course that we did. And a huge problem is just pure accessibility of the women's sports. When you aren't showing it and you're not giving it the opportunity, no one's going to be able to watch it. And they want to say that the ratings go from the other side, but it's not. If you can't put it in front of people, the ratings are always going to be down.
This is perfect. Was going to be my point too. Just because one of my pet projects with the S Network is last season we got the rights to the New York Liberty. So that's one of the projects I work on. And there's a game tonight, actually, at 7 p.m. on Fox Sports.
And they have amazing branding, the best branding in the WNBA.
Yeah, so, and I mean, just because I've kind of been delved in that world for a bit too, I mean, like the WNBA, when COVID shut down a lot of the sports, the WNBA draft in April was scheduled to be on ESPN2. And since ESPN had no other programming, the women of the league actually kind of pushed and were like, well, if you have nothing, why can't we be on main ESPN? And they got it pushed there. And just to Renee's point too, I mean, like, the scheduling of it has always kind of been an issue just because some teams are still owned by the NBA teams and then they have to share arenas and dates like that. But now that they're able to kind of have an overlapping season, you see a lot of NBA players too supporting the WNBA. And I think that's also helpful too, because, you know, when you're watching Trae Young, who's talking about how he's watching the games that day, you're like, oh, maybe, you know, Trae Young thinks it's valid. Okay, like maybe I'll put it on too. And having the accessibility too, like they're having a lot of, you know, national TV games this season, and ESPN picked up a bit more towards the end of the season. So go WNBA.
I am so glad you said that, because I specifically remember as a part of our WNBA project, you said if NBA players get excited about the WNBA and support it and talk about it and put it out on their social media, good things will happen.
Right. And two, I think part of it having on national TV, I don't know if this is the right way, but like it validates a bit. You know, if you're watching like a WNBA game on some local channel and they don't have necessarily the money or the resources to put behind it, it isn't going to look obviously as high quality as an ESPN broadcast. And so like in your mind, you're kind of like, oh, this product as a whole isn't good, but you know, the quality of play on the court is, but you know, it's still lacking some of the resources that the NBA now possesses, because the NBA is, you know, 50 years ahead of where the WNBA is because of when they started, obviously, and things like that. So
Totally. So before we wrap up here, I just want to take the time to get to one last Q&A. So I guess we'll tie this together. So this was specifically for Erin, but I guess as a social media coordinator, you know, a graphics coordinator, or working in operations, as you know, we kind of have the time now to maybe pick up some more skills. What skills do you think are necessary to be successful in your field, or you know, to get to where you guys are, from where we are to where you guys are? What would you suggest doing?
I love this question. I've had a few students from NYU reach out and just do like information interviews and things like that, and it always pops up. I think right now for somebody in digital marketing and social, I would say skills with the Adobe suite is super important. Being able to create content. It's one thing if you can strategize content and understand the platforms and things like that, but if you can wear some more hats and help develop the content beyond just the graphics and video people that sports teams have, you're going to be better off. What most people don't know is most sports teams are very small in terms of their like content teams. It's starting to get bigger, but obviously it's not quite there. So if you can help in that, it's super important. So Premiere, After Effects for like motion graphics, and Photoshop, absolutely huge positive. I think you're going to start seeing that it's going to be a requirement sooner or later, and it's not just going to be in that bonus column. Because I think if you are putting out social content, you should be able to create it. Along with that, maybe something like Procreate in order to do some like drawings. And then I think secondarily is anything with analytics. If I could go back, and maybe if NYU wants to create a course on like social analytics or like an analysis of stats and data within like social media and digital media, I think that would be huge. Understanding your audience, understanding how content is performing and why it is, tied into broadcast, things like that. If you can understand and develop content based on your data and your facts, that helps with sponsorships, that helps with TV, it helps with so many things. And again, social media people, they just wear a lot of hats as it is, but data is so important. And if you aren't looking at it and you're not focused on it and understanding what it means, I just don't think that you're truly going to be able to create strategy, which is so essential to the job.
Yeah, for me particularly, as a graphics coordinator, I think one of the things you have to definitely be organized, have a sense of, knowing your sport, whether baseball, basketball, or soccer, which we particularly cover. And I lost my train of thought, sorry. But I know, like, triple checking everything because, if your talent says something wrong, or like the videotape looked funny because it had the wrong play in it, like, that's something that in the mind of the viewer that kind of they gloss over. But like when you see a graphic on screen and like, it has Erin Judge's name misspelled or something like that, kind of sticks in your mind and people can screen grab that. And so that's why, at our office, everyone always says like the graphics coordinator job is one of the toughest. And I remember my other point now was, crap, I just forgot it again. I'll come back to it. Sorry. I'm just having like the biggest brain fart.
No worries.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All good. You want to jump in, Rene?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think everything that Erin said is like gibberish to me because I don't do social media or even understand it. So that's important. And then I'm like, I don't know anything about my own social media, let alone Teams. So don't follow me on social. You're not going to get any good content, that's for sure. But I think for me, like, those are I have heard of those things before, and they're all very important skills. And definitely in that world, if you're looking to go down that path of graphic design, media relations, social media, that whole marketing, everything. But even if you're just looking for a not social digital media path, I can't stress enough reading and writing skills. All of you have to write emails, whether it's to colleagues, supervisors, to someone else. And there's nothing I hate more than getting a really terrible, misspelled, grammatically incorrect email. And whether the person may be incredibly gifted and talented and smart, I'm not going to think that based off of the email I just received. And if you want to grow your place in the industry and you want to grow your network and your abilities and have people respect you, I think a lot of it has to do with your verbal and written communication skills, because no one's going to advocate for you better than you. So there's so many specific and skills like Erin was talking about for specific things, but because I'm not in that world, just generally verbal and written communication, take the time to learn new verbs. Like, nothing is worse than reading a resume and it's assisted with this, with this. Every bullet point starts with the same verb. Pull out a thesaurus or a dictionary. You have Google at your hand. Use the words collaborated, coordinated. Like, just change it up, because then you become a better writer in the long run, and your emails and the way you speak to other people, you're going to get so much respect for that. And I think it really speaks volumes, something as simple as that.
Absolutely.
The small skills, like the business side of things, I definitely feel like NYU was great at it, especially when you would go talk with like your faculty advisors and like networking and those things. Like, we learned those, but if you would actually go back to like my classes, I probably would have wished I did great in it, don't get me wrong, but I wish I would have probably paid a little bit more attention in the writing classes. They're there for a reason. So definitely a test to Rene in terms of like, know how to write, know how to public speak, being able to give presentations, creating good presentations, just like any of those like businessy soft skills, add to your set of skills that you can do, and just make you a better coworker, which is always good.
Yeah. I think it's cover letters thrown out quicker than misspelling and incorrect grammar.
Absolutely. Well, that was all such incredible advice. So with that, we'll wrap it up and let you guys go for the rest of the day. So from Ben and I, we just wanted to say thank you again for joining our series. And I'm sure all the students as well are very grateful that you were able to join us today. So thank you so much. Stay safe and have a great rest of the day.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.